I got a phone call from a bride that wanted to hire me for her wedding, and I'm just totally lying to her, honestly, and I'm telling her like, oh yeah, I've been doing this for years, yes. And I'm literally like just painting with one hand.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Imperative Narrative Podcast, the show by storytellers, about storytellers, and for storytellers. We're your hosts, Kurt Camphausen
and Lucas Arnold. And today we are joined by nationally known photographer, Jacob Slaton. Yeah. Thanks for being on the show.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
All right. So we like to start off the show with all of our guests this way. Who are you? What do you do? And how did your journey start in your profession?
Yeah. So my name is Jacob Slaton.
Good.
And I'm a photographer here in Little Rock, Arkansas. I've been doing it for 10 years. I just had my 10-year anniversary in November, which is the day that I lost my job. That's what I mark as my last real job. I lost on November 1st, 2008. So 2018 was my 10-year anniversary of not really having a real job.
And what did you do before this?
So I have a degree in construction management.
Oh, wow.
From UALR. And which took me 9 years to get.
Perfect.
And so I was a project manager for a construction company for 3 years. Well, two different construction companies. And meaning I was like in the office writing contracts and estimating jobs and stuff. And but really I spent most of my time just yelling at subcontractors on the phone, and like, when are you going to do the plumbing? And it wasn't fun. I enjoy construction. It's interesting to me, but I was making enemies at that job, and I'd rather make friends with people, Yeah. So although it was interesting, I lost that job, along with half the company on the same day. So 2008 was particularly bad for the economy, and construction was one of the first things to go.
Right.
And so me and half the company went away in one day.
Wow.
And it was weird because right after that, I was looking for a job, but so was everybody else, So there's guys with 20 years of experience trying to get the same job I was trying to get. And, so they weren't going to hire me.
So how in the world does one make a job from, I know very little construction people in general, but the ones I do know usually don't make the jump into photography. How did that happen?
Yeah, so it's pretty cool. I had been interested in photography for a while, and actually, since we're telling stories here,
let's do it.
It was New Year's Eve one night, one New Year's Eve, I don't know when, but we were doing it was just about 5 or 6 people hanging around, and we were doing one of those things where you kind of like, what am I doing with my life, and like, what would your dream job be?
Yeah.
And then the question was like, what's your dream job? And then the other question was like, what's your dream job? So one would be like attainable realistically, and the other would be, scuba dive instructor, whatever. And so I said that my dream job would be a residential construction, build houses. And my dream job would be to be like a photographer that travels the world and stuff. And then somebody else in the group also said that they wanted to be a photographer. And I found myself like encouraging her to follow that dream. And then I realized like, oh, now I have to follow my own advice or I'm a total, So that was a few years prior to losing my job. But in that meantime, I had been kind of saving up money and trying to buy a camera and stuff. The day that I lost my job on a Monday, but the previous Saturday, like 2 days before, I shot my own wedding, like my first wedding by myself. Before that, I had been shooting weddings with this other friend that I knew, Ashley Carson. She's a great photographer.
So you're second shooting?
I was second shooting weddings, yeah, with her, and I was having fun with it. I was really loving it. And she would let me kind of just do whatever I wanted to, basically, during the day, it was low pressure, but I got to have fun and build the portfolio and stuff. Mm-hmm. And then a friend of mine was getting married, and she hired me to do it. And when I was walking around shooting the reception, and they paid me I think they paid me $300 for it, right? Yeah. I mean, it was in Bentonville.
So you paid for the gas.
Yeah,
it was gone.
I didn't make any money.
Yeah.
But I had the time of my life, and I was walking around the reception and going, if I can do this for the rest of my life, I'd be psyched about it. And then I lost my job 2 days later. And
that's crazy. So you shot your first wedding by yourself 2 days before you got fired.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
And then that was just confirmation. You're just like, I'm going all in.
Well, that plus I couldn't find a job, you know, and on top of that, I was pulling unemployment because at that point I had a wife and a kid. So at the beginning of 2008, my wife and I were both working with no kids. And at the end of 2008, she had quit to be a mom, and I had lost my job. And so at the end of 2008, we had 0 jobs and 1 kid. So it was intense.
Yeah.
And it was tough. It was really tough. And I was on unemployment. I was painting houses with a friend and building decks. And I was literally like, and I had also created a photography website, you know, and I was trying to get that going. And I was literally like, I'll never forget, I was standing on top of a ladder. It was in like February, on top of like a 20-foot ladder with like a frozen rag in one hand and a paintbrush in the other hand, just painting this house. Just, I mean, cold, but it was miserable. And I got a phone call from a bride that wanted to hire me for her wedding. And I'm just totally lying to her, honestly, you know, and I'm telling her like, oh yeah, I've been doing this for years. Yes. And I'm literally like just painting with one hand. And, but you know what? It was like in my mind, I justified it by thinking, I do know that I can do it. And I just need to sell her on the idea. And B, like, I have to pay my mortgage. You know? And so I wasn't concerned at all about whether I'd be able to do the work properly. And she hired me, and it was great. You know?
Yeah.
But that's
great. You know, that's funny you say
fantastic.
that, because recently I heard a story about another entrepreneur, and like I just heard somebody say that part of being an entrepreneur is you have to sell people on where you're gonna be, not maybe where you currently are.
right. Yep.
So that's
Exactly
a
right.
prime example of that.
If you tell people, I've never done this before, why would they?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I'm inexperienced. But you should pay me a lot of money.
I've not even held this camera before.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you went to a restaurant and the cook said, this is actually my first day, I've never done this before, you know, you might still eat there, but you'd be like, all right.
Can he cook my food instead of you?
Exactly. There's a little bit of bullshitting that has to go into it.
Yeah.
Yep.
But you know, that's just how the world works. I mean, every new business is a new business.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you have experience somewhere else, you probably don't know what you're doing.
So from that point, like, obviously you lost your job, you're trying to make money. Where did it kind of start hitting to where you were making money and started doing this as a career?
Yeah. I got on a roll shooting weddings, families, kids, and I was shooting like, I called it a quick shoot, and it was $80 and it was 30 minutes. And for $80 and 30 minutes, I would edit 15 shots for you of your family, your kids, whatever. And my goal with that was, I was thinking like, I want to be like Walmart pricing. Like I'll just be cheaper than everybody else and catch those people that just can't afford a $500 session or whatever. And for 30 minutes, it really isn't that much of my time anyway. So that really took off, and I got on a roll with that and the weddings. And then like bigger family shoots and bridal and engagements sort of stuff. And that picked up enough to where I could quit painting houses with my buddy. And I was able to, now I wasn't making real money by any means, but I was busy enough to where I didn't want to have to show up to a shoot covered in paint.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then that, so that was picking up. And then at the same time, I had a friend that worked at the Clinton School, the University of Arkansas Clinton School downtown, which is a graduate program associated with the University of Arkansas. And they said they needed a new photographer there for their events and stuff. And I was just like, yeah, whatever you want. So that was kind of my first commercial type gig, you know, and I actually just stopped doing that like 2 months ago. So I did that for 9 years. And so what that was is they had me come and just shoot all their guest speakers and stuff. And long story short, that turned into me getting all this kind of event type stuff. Because I had that in my portfolio to show to people, you know, like that, this is what I do. And
in your mind, did you want to be more of a commercial guy? I mean, you know, weddings are, I feel like weddings are a thing because we film weddings. Yeah. Weddings are either like you're all in or you're like, this is cool for now, but I want to be here.
No, I didn't have that thought. I just wanted to make money.
Yeah.
And I was going to take whatever job came came to me. But at that time, I was still happy to shoot weddings. I was psyched about weddings. And outside of them being on Saturdays, it's just one day. So I wasn't really actively trying to get out of the wedding work. I was just happy to be making money, taking pictures. And then so the Clinton School thing turned into event stuff, like local events, and then it also turned into New York Times. And that was the jump,
Just a little jump.
Yeah. Now let me say this: I told Lucas earlier, or one of y'all, there's always a lame story behind every cool story.
We like lame stories.
Okay, so the New York Times sounds really cool, and it is totally cool. But that did not get me rich. I'm not rich at that, you know what I mean? There's a reason why, news photographers have a hard time, because they don't really pay. You don't get paid a whole lot, even for the New York Times.
What are you shooting for New York Times?
So the original photographer at the Clinton School, a guy named Nima, was going to law school, and so I kind of took that job, and he kind of helped me get going in that and everything. But he was the New York Times guy for Arkansas as well. And so when he was in law school, he started sending me all his New York Times stuff. So they'd call him, and he'd say, "Call Jacob." And so they would call me. And so this is a funny story. The first New York Times shoot, let's see. My son, Wynn, was born July 22nd, 2010. Okay. So now we're a year and a half after I started photography. And I got a call from the New York Times on July 22nd, 2010.
Oh my gosh.
And they said, "Hey, it was a writer. She's now the bureau chief for the Atlanta bureau. Her name is Kim Severson, and she called me and said, 'Hey, I got a story in Hope about the watermelons, and I need you to shoot it, and I need you to shoot it tomorrow.' And she said, 'I'm actually flying in today, and I need a photographer with me.' And I'm taking the call, and my wife's in the bed with the baby. You know what I mean? Like, we're still at the hospital.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I need to call you back. Let me call you right back. And so I hung up the phone, and I said, 'Babe, I got the New York Times just called me, and I can't really figure out how to turn this down.' You know what I mean? Like, and she said, 'You know what? We're good. You can go. You should go do that.'
Awesome. Which
is like, yeah, my wife is the coolest for that. And she recognized what that meant, not only for me, but for the business, And I seem like a bastard for leaving my family in the hospital, but the baby was fine. Everything was good,
Good. Yeah.
So the next day I get in the car, and I go pick up Kim. She was at the hotel, and we were driving down to Hope together.
What story was this?
It was just about the watermelons. It was about the Hope watermelons.
Interesting.
Which are famous.
Oh, okay. I didn't know.
Yeah.
I'm a terrible Arkansan parent.
No, yeah. Well, now.
Yeah, we do. Back in 2010.
Yeah.
Watermelons were famous.
Yeah.
Oh, they've been famous for a long time.
Okay, good. Okay, they're still famous.
In fact, I'm pretty sure Bill Clinton kind of made them and Hope famous.
Yeah.
So it was just a story about watermelons. It was like one of these fun news stories that isn't really news, but whatever.
Yeah.
So we're driving down there to shoot. Actually, we drove down there, and I get to talk to her on the way and everything. We shoot all day long together, and it was really cool. She was really cool. And on the way back, we were just kind of getting to know each other a little bit. And I said, yeah. She was asking me about my family, and do you have any kids? And I said, yeah, I've got a daughter who's like 2 or whatever, and actually just had a son yesterday.
Funny you should ask.
Yeah. And she was like, what? And I was like, yeah, we had him yesterday in the hospital. And she's like, oh my God, why are you here? And I said, look, I really wanted to do this job, and the baby's fine, everything's fine. So it was okay to do it. And she goes, hold on. And she picks up the phone, and she calls her boss, who was in New York. And she goes, hey, this guy, Jacob Slaton, you need to make him the Arkansas guy for everything, because he just left his baby in the hospital to be a New York Times photographer. And we got to send him everything.
Wow.
And he was like, all right, great. And so they started sending me all the stuff.
That is crazy.
I know.
But that seems like
awesome.
That seems like something New Yorkers would appreciate. I don't know. That sounds weird. Like just because they're just constantly going.
Well,
dedication.
The thing about I mean, I don't know much at all about the news world, but as a photographer who occasionally shoots for the New York Times and AP, they are so fast paced that they don't have time for anybody that's not ready to jump and move whenever you want. Yeah. They're not interested. They don't want to talk to you. They don't want to, they don't want to deal with your little diva schedule. They're like, here's the deal. Do you want it or not?
Yeah. Because they got to get it out.
They got to crank it out.
Yeah.
And they got 15 other things they're trying to do. So they appreciated that.
Yeah.
The drive, I guess. And that led to lots of really cool stuff and meeting really cool people and being in some bizarre situations. Not a whole lot of money, but a lot of cool experience.
Yeah.
And I mean, it doesn't hurt to say that you've shot for the New York Times a lot.
Yeah.
Definitely can't hurt it.
It doesn't hurt.
Yeah. Well, and a couple of other clients, I'll just run through a few. I mean, these are all on your website. You've done work for Apple. You've done work for Time. I mean, like, how do you, as people listen to this is, a local podcast, and I'm sure photographers watching or listening to this are going, how in the world can I, as a Little Rock photographer, like, get out into the world? But I mean, your story is just like, it seems it's just being in the right place at the right time.
Yeah. I mean, I would say, I would say that, but also just kind of being a yes man.
Yeah.
Because I think that, even really ambitious people, can get freaked out by the big jobs, and you go, oh, I'm not qualified for that at all. But I've never said that.
You say that you're way overqualified, and
look, like, my wife will be laughing when she hears this because I'm like the most overconfident person that you'll ever meet. And it is overconfidence because but whatever, it's led to some pretty cool stuff.
That's awesome. And on this podcast we talk about storytelling. I mean, this is direct. I'm sure some people can maybe look at photography and go, how do you tell stories with a photograph? But you are literally helping tell news stories with your photography.
Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah. Especially in the case of the news stories, like the wedding story is obvious.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, most of the time the story is obvious, and really it should be obvious, I guess, with photos. Like, if it's not obvious what the story is, then what is the photo? Unless it's just a headshot or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the news, it was strange for me to, so for the news stuff, it was the first time where I've ever had a subject that maybe didn't want to be photographed. You know what I mean? Or like just wasn't terribly excited about the fact that they're in the newspaper, but they agreed to do it. And so my style is generally, I like to be upbeat and make people laugh and be happy and smile and get those natural smiles. But when you're shooting a story about unemployment, I don't want the guy to be smiling in the photo.
Right. Yeah.
And so it was weird for me to have to dial that back and just kind of learn how to shoot like subdued.
Yeah.
And even though we were laughing right before I did the shot is mellow, or it has the shot that they use obviously always has, the right mood, or whatever.
What's your process for something like that? Because obviously you have different, especially in the news, you're going to have a different story. I guess obviously you probably talked with the writer and figure out what the story's about and what angle you're going with it. And then what's your process for, excuse me, how you wanting to shoot it and what you use.
So most of the time, I will get at least, I'll get something from the writer, or from the photo editor. Either sometimes the story's already finished and I can just read it. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes I only get like, hey, I need you to go to Batesville and shoot a photo of this guy that's unemployed, and that's all I know.
Yeah.
But that's kind of all I need to know, I guess.
Yeah.
But there's generally some kind of a setup on it, and I need to know, like, are these people smiling?
Yeah.
Or is this guy? Like, I shot a photo of a guy that was like being sued for something, and I was like, how do you want me to depict this guy? Is he proud of himself? Is he not? You know what I mean? And then, then you enter into like newspaper bias, which goes all the way down to the photographer. You know what I mean? So it's funny that, you end up having influence where, now, of course, the photo editor is the one choosing the photos, but he can only choose from what I send him.
So you don't do any of the editing of the photos, or anything?
No, I do. The photo editor for news organizations doesn't mean editing in Lightroom. It means selecting.
Choosing what gets the shot, what shot.
Yeah, he's the one that decides what goes in the newspaper.
Yeah. What is the balance? I'm not gonna use like super technical terms here, but what's the balance of like artsy like wedding photography mixed with New York? Are the shots you're getting New York Times similar to wedding photography, or are they very just like?
No, it's definitely a different thing. In fact, the first shoot I did with them for the watermelons, the writer that was with me said something that stuck with me, and I think about it all the time. Which she said, "We want these photos to be Timesian," and I was like, "All right, I don't know what that means, but I also do completely know what that means." Which is, it's hard to describe, but if you pick up a New York Times, the photos have a flavor to them. Mm. You know what I mean? And they're most of the time they're wide angle, they're not real tight, and they've got a lot of elements in the shot. You know, that's my takeaway anyway. Mm. So pick up a newspaper. In fact, when you're at, Starbucks and they got all the newspapers out, it's interesting to look at the way that the styles that they choose, because they are interesting. They are different. So, you approach it with more. So for a wedding, I'm going to be pretty hands-on, meaning like I'm talking to the people and telling them what to do. Mm-hmm. As a news photographer, which I am not, I'm a freelancer that does that sometimes, but I have to put that hat on when I do it. Mm-hmm. You have to stay out of the story. You can't influence anything unless it's clearly just a portrait. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But if I'm shooting an event, like a protest, I have to not influence at all.
Just capturing.
Meaning like I have to think about, what I'm wearing. I wouldn't wear a shirt for or against a protest as the photographer for it. So it is pretty interesting. The approach is, you do have to think about it.
Mm-hmm. For these other clients, these other big time, international clients, are you doing similar things with the Times, or what is that like for an Apple? I mean, what are you doing for Apple?
Well, so for Apple, the reason I get to put that on my website is because they bought one of my photos, and it appeared on the Shot on the iPhone ad campaign.
No. That's awesome.
During the Olympics. Yeah.
Wow.
So they didn't hire me to do anything, but they bought one of my photos.
Hey, that counts.
Absolutely. Yeah. I cashed a check from Apple.
Yeah. So, that's almost better, because they it's one thing to be hired and people see your work, but it's like, can you deliver on the back end? But it's another thing for them to see your work and go, we really like that. We want to use that.
That's true.
The work's done, and they're just like, here's a check.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
That's awesome.
So they contacted me about 4 or 5 times about that one photo.
Wow.
And the reason they didn't use it before was because it wasn't on the most current iPhone. I didn't take it on the most current iPhone. And so used to they still do it sometimes, but the ad campaign will say shot on an iPhone 8, or like it'll specify the phone, and they're very serious about making sure that statement is true. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And so my phone was a couple years old, but when the Olympics came up, whenever it was, I guess it was like
2012 or 2016.
It must have been 2016. Yeah. They did a whole ad campaign, and it didn't say what iPhone. So they were able to use my shot.
What was the shot of?
It was a shot of 2 twin boys that my daughter's friends with, and they're just identical twins, and they're cool looking kids. And they were just over at my house one day, and I was doing this thing where I had this like it's like a mechanic's light, like an LED light, like a 18 LEDs. And a little handheld thing with a magnet on it. And I put a piece of orange CTO gel on it. And I was just doing portraits with iPhone portraits. I'd hold it up in front of somebody and snap some photos.
Yeah.
And so they came over, and I did that in the hallway with them. And they were wearing matching like red polo shirts because they had just gotten out of school.
Yeah.
And so I have this great shot where they're almost indistinguishable. And I just put it on Instagram, and I hashtagged it iPhone portrait. And that's how they found it.
Wow.
So hashtagging works in that sense.
And I'm sure their parents didn't mind that they're...
Oh, no, they were psyched out of their mind.
Yeah.
And here's the cool thing. So the boys are on a basketball team, and I'm friends with their dad. And And I had been telling their dad. In fact, Apple paid them a modeling fee for the kids.
That's awesome.
And so I assume that it's okay that I'm saying all of this into the real world. It's over now. Check has been cashed.
Yeah.
So he knew that it was coming out, but I kept telling him, I said, don't get too excited because they may cut it at the last minute. Even though they've paid both of us, it may not actually show up in the thing. Or they might save it and use it later.
Yeah.
We don't know. And then the day that it was supposed to come out, I went to apple.com, and my shot was the whole entire front page of apple.com.
Wow.
And mine was the only shot on there.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, imagine your head exploding from seeing that.
Yeah. Screenshot.
Oh yeah. I was like,
Post.
yeah.
That's awesome.
I literally was like, this might disappear any second now.
Yeah.
This message will self-destruct.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that existed, but I still didn't know if it was going to be, seen anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
So it was the night of the opening ceremonies of the Olympics, and I knew that that's when the commercial was going to run. Didn't know if my shot was in it or not. So my buddy Trey, the father of the kids, was with the boys at a basketball tournament somewhere else, like at a hotel, and so he had all the boys in the hotel room together. They were watching the opening ceremonies, and they didn't know about any of this.
Wow.
And so all these like, 10, 8, 9-year-old boys or whatever sitting on these beds, rambunctious. And then the Apple commercial comes on, and Trey's like, hey, everybody be quiet, watch. And they're like, what? Why? And then they pop up, and everybody loses their mind. They
So
totally
awesome.
lost their minds. And that commercial ran for a while. And then actually Apple sent me in the mail, got this package from Italy. And it was this massive coffee table book. I mean, it's probably 200 pages of every single shot from that whole campaign, and all the outdoor, like shots of the outdoor, like billboards and stuff that they did. And my shot appears in that book 3 times, and it's got these big fold outs, and it's got my credit in the back and everything.
That is
That's really cool. They
Man.
go all out
Yeah.
like that.
Yes.
That's
I mean, that book had to be expensive.
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool. And when the funny thing is, so when they decided, I'm sort of having talks with them on the phone about, we're negotiating about buying this photo from me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the lady called me and said, okay, so we decided, like, your photo has made it through all the different steps, and we want to use it in the campaign, and now we need to talk about money. And she said, I can see that you're a professional photographer. And she said, we basically pay people like based on merit.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
They don't want to pay a random dad who just did it for fun.
You just
Right.
happen to have a great
Exactly.
photo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In other words, somebody else would be really excited about $500 for that.
Yeah.
But I knew that it was worth more than that. And so I call this company that I used to, they used to consult with me, or I used them for consulting on different things, like big jobs that I'd bid and stuff. And I asked them, I said, hey, how should I bid this thing? And it was like exclusive rights to use the photo for 12 months for like any purpose outside of TV, and then 6 months for TV alone, right? And for worldwide broadcasting. And I told him that, and he was like, well, you're basically describing the most expensive photo, you know what I mean? Like one of the biggest companies in the world.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just in terms of the number of eyeballs that are going to see it during the Olympics,
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
there's few events
It's like
that
Super Bowl
the world
ad.
watches. Yeah, more than that, it's like
Yeah.
World Cup level.
Yeah.
So he was like, tell him $, and I was like, okay. So I called him and I said, I want $, for this photo. And she goes, how about? And I was like, deal.
Wow.
Oh my.
Isn't that just on a side note?
By the way, I may have to ask you to cut that part out of this whole podcast.
We can do that.
Okay.
I was just saying, just on a
Those beep over the number.
Yes.
That's fine.
How about yeah? Like pricing stuff is still to me like terrifying because
yeah.
I don't know why. It's just like that fear of like okay, I really want the job and
Yeah.
I want to be compensated fairly.
Yep.
Mhm.
Oh, I know.
But I also want the job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go too high, don't get the job.
Yeah.
Go too low, and you're not
That's right.
making it worth it yourself.
Yeah.
worth your
That's
time.
exactly right.
So,
And you don't know what to, price it. I mean, I have learned what to price things at, but you know, you don't know that until you know that.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you can price yourself out of the job on both ends. You know, if you're too high, you don't get it. If you're too low, you don't get it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because people think you must not be very good.
And like in a field where there's so many people that can think, and I will be careful here because there are people that do it for fun, that it's cool. Like the capabilities of the iPhone are really cool, but there has to be a line where you're, as a professional, you're like, but like I have experience, like I know how this stuff works technically. You know, has that been a hard thing, like in your field, to get used to? Like anybody with an iPhone can take a sort of good looking photo and call themselves a photographer?
No, because...
Or do companies still recognize who's really good and who's not?
I think anyone with real money to spend on photography in the commercial world knows talent when they see it. You know, not to say that I'm that guy, but I've been lucky enough to be that guy a couple times. In fact, I think the proliferation of cameras has made my job easier because people are so inundated with photos all the time on Instagram and Facebook primarily. I mean, like iPhone shots, you know, just mobile phone pictures, that when they see a professional shot out of a professional camera taken by a professional, they immediately know that it's a better shot. Yeah. And so it actually serves to elevate the pros, I think. And not that everybody else is on a different level. I mean, my iPhone shots look just like everybody else's.
Right.
You know what I mean? But I also have a different, you know, level of gear and stuff.
But it's also not somebody taking out their phone for the first, time trying to snap a photo and not understanding composition or color and things like that.
Yeah. But sometimes people get really lucky, you know. And I don't think that iPhones have taken over the professional world in any sense at all. I mean, there was like a fear of that. And there was like a Time magazine cover shot by an iPhone one time, but it was more of a gimmick. And I always said, like, if they're telling you what camera was used, it's not a photo, it's an ad. Yeah. We don't need to know the camera. We'll judge if the photo's good or not. Yeah. You know? It doesn't matter. Yeah. Like, don't sell me an ad in a Time cover. You know? Yeah. I mean, that's the point. You know?
Shot on it.
Which is that was part of the point. Yeah. You know, was like, iPhones are great. Yeah. Here's an example. And that's true. But until people start hiring wedding photographers and accepting them using iPhones, it won't ever be a real. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. If anyone shows up to any event with an iPhone instead of a real camera, you know, they would be immediately fired.
You know? Hopefully.
Yeah. Let's hope so.
They could say they're trying to go Peter Jackson 48 frames per second. Like, just experimentation.
Yeah, exactly.
I know what I'm doing. Don't worry.
Yeah. I wish I could shoot with iPhones. I mean, my back would hurt a lot less.
Yeah.
So true.
So not to go like too hyper detail into gear or anything, but do you have like specific camera that you use for certain things?
Yeah. So
what's the evolution been since you started?
Yeah.
So I'm a total cheapskate, and I don't spend money on things in general, and I buy used things on eBay and all that. With that said, I just got the new Canon R, the EOS R.
Yeah.
The mirrorless. You have one?
Lucas just got it.
Yeah, over there.
Oh, it's over there. Yeah. Sure. I love that thing.
It's been great.
It's awesome.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So that's the first time I've ever bought like not that it's the top of the line, but a new camera.
I feel left out now.
It's awesome. In fact, I was using it. I was shooting an event last week. I put it on auto mode just to see how it would do, and it was almost flawless.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, these cameras, the way cameras are being made now, may actually eliminate the need to have photography knowledge in your head. You know what I mean? Because they're so good.
Yeah.
Of course, the auto mode won't do everything. Yeah. But it sure does a lot. And it's better than any other auto mode I've ever used.
Really?
And it just made me go, you know, like knowing shutter speeds and f-stops may be the new darkroom stuff that people don't need to know about anymore.
Wow, yeah.
Which is sad in one sense, but it's also, you know, it opens up the world for more people to do it and do it well.
You know, what'd you start out with?
So I started with a, let's see. Well, I started with a Rebel, Canon. I've always been Canon.
Yeah.
Had a Rebel something. And
I still have a Rebel T2i.
Start off with a T3i.
That may be what I had.
Yeah.
It was one of the T something I's.
I mean, it's not, for starters.
It's great.
Not bad.
Fine,
yeah.
It was great.
Yeah.
The only thing I was missing was the wheel on the back.
Oh yeah.
You know, and I didn't know what to do anyway.
Yeah.
So I started with the Rebel, and then I got a used 30D, Canon 30D, which was I think I paid like $400, $300 for it or something. And actually, the first time I shot a wedding with Ashley, she gave me a lens as my payment for the wedding. She had this old lens that was like a 24-70 or something like that.
I wouldn't mind that payment, actually.
I was so happy about
yeah.
it. Because all I had at that point was the little 50
Yeah,
like the kit lens.
Yeah. I had the nifty 50.
Yeah.
So I had the 30 in that, and then I got a 5D, the original 5D, which was my first full frame camera, and it was awesome, but old already at that point. And then I got a 7D, and then I got a 6D, and then I got another 6D, and then I got the R. So, yeah. None of those are the top of the line Canon by any means.
But that speaks to, I mean, that's like, when you start getting into the camera world, whether it's photography or filmmaking, you realize it's almost less about the gear and more about what you know. It's all about user knowledge.
Yeah. I always say the gear does matter. And, I always say a Hasselblad can't do a Holga, and a Holga can't do a Hasselblad. And it depends on what you want to get out of your shots. Now, most of the current digital cameras all do the exact same thing. So they're going to do the same, So, but the gear matters to some extent.
Right.
And it matters a lot if you want a very specific look to the photos.
Yeah.
But most people aren't asking for specific looks. They're just asking for good shots.
Yeah. And going off gear, so you mentioned a little bit, even just that iPhone shot that you had. Do you do much setup shots for things like the news or things like that? Obviously, portraits you probably do a little bit more, but is it more run and gun stuff that you do, or is it more setup?
I would say it's an even combo, really. Okay. So I split my business up into thirds, essentially. So 1/3 would be the events that I do, which is these big corporate conferences, which are boring, but they're easy. Yeah. That's the run and gun type stuff. They give me a photo schedule and I just go knock it out. That's 1/3 of my business. Okay. Another third is like magazines, newspaper type stuff, editorial type work. And then now that is going to be a combination of kind of run and gun and setups. And then the other third is like corporate headshots and portrait type stuff, which is obviously way more goes into it. And I wish that I had a sector of like advertising photography. That's what I'd really like to get into. But that's really hard to get into. Yeah. Especially in Little Rock, Arkansas.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that for a little bit, because I bring this up almost every time.
I'm going to refill my water.
Oh, yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
This will be at the very beginning of the show.
Well,
yeah.
Just cut this part.
Put that back in the front.
Put this in the beginning.
Front. Welcome to the Imperative Narrative Podcast. We're your hosts.
We should have stopped for commercial break. After these words from Squarespace. You know what? I've thought about.
Who will be a sponsor someday.
Yeah. Here's what I was thinking. Maybe we shouldn't. You don't have to add this part. But what if you just said that it was sponsored by Squarespace? They wouldn't mind, and it would give you all this extra credibility.
It's true. Would we be sued?
No, it's free advertising.
It's true. It's free advertising.
Yeah. Squarespace. Just copy whatever they say on some other podcast.
Awesome.
Domain.com.
MailChimp.
Now we're sponsored by.
Yeah. Just got sponsored by Squarespace.
Yeah. Thanks to Jacob Slaton.
Well, I don't think they would care.
I was going to say.
They wouldn't even notice.
Probably not. Unless they might be like,
they don't have anybody on their staff listening to every podcast to find out if someone's falsely.
Why would they care? Although here's the thing is that if we say that we're sponsored, we will never actually be sponsored by them, and we won't get paid.
But maybe one of their competitors would say, "Hey, we want to buy you away from Squarespace."
We'll just tell them, "Hey, we're sponsored by
we're available. Yeah,
sponsored by Squarespace."
It's not a bad idea.
Better get in on this.
Why not? Why not? So let's talk about that. So being in Little Rock, not necessarily the hotbed of or the center for creativity, maybe necessarily, but growing.
Yeah.
What is just being an entrepreneur in Central Arkansas? Obviously, you're 10 years into this thing. I'm sure there's still moments that are slightly terrifying because you still need people to hire you to pay. What have been some big obstacles that you've had to overcome?
Well, just the need to be a jack of all trades. I don't think this market is big enough for specialists, unless you're talking about weddings. You know, you can do just fine in weddings because that'll just keep happening and whatever.
People still get married. Yeah.
People get married every weekend.
Yeah.
So outside of the weddings, you know, there's a niche kind of families and kids sort of, and that's all kind of what I would call residential photography, you know what I mean, versus commercial. Yeah. In the commercial world, I think you do kind of have to be a jack of all trades. And so that's why, you know, though a master of none, you know, I mean, that's why I do architecture and I do magazines and I do events and I do corporate headshots and, you know, news stuff, like you name it. Like I will be excited to do it. So although that wasn't hard it's a challenge that I think a lot of people face is they want to be a portrait photographer or architecture photographer. And you can, I mean, it is possible, but it's harder to make a real living doing that in this market. So that would be, I guess that would be what I would say the main challenge.
Yeah, because I've experienced that too. You want to be a special. You know what you want to do.
Yeah,
but you're like, but these people keep paying me to do these other things.
So that's what I was going to say. You know, the other challenge is, and I can't figure out a way to say this that's not like depressing, but like in a way, just kind of giving up on your dream a little bit.
Oh yeah.
You know, and saying like, look, I don't have to be XYZ. All I really want to do is make money being a photographer. And if that means I'm shooting pictures of your pets, you know, that's fine because I would rather do that than any other job. And so, I always say it's what keeps me from like working at a bank. To me, like working at a bank is the ultimate worst possible. Just like, standing behind your little square with your suit on. I don't want to say give up on the dream because, you know, every photographer, every creative of any kind wants to be famous for it. Yeah. Sooner or later, they want to be known. They want to be recognized. We all want to be Annie Leibovitz, you know, or some, you know, Steven Spielberg. Yeah. But that's just not going to happen for everybody. And then I got to thinking about it and I thought, you know what, if I used to say like working for Rolling Stone magazine would be my dream photography job. But I got to thinking about it. And if they called me up right now and said, we want to hire you full time to be our, you know, in-house photographer, and we're going to pay you X amount of dollars to do it. And we're going to move you to New York and all this stuff. I would probably, honestly, I think I'd probably turn it down. Because I don't want to move to New York, you know? Or, I mean, I love New York, but I don't think I would actually take any of those dream jobs that I thought I wanted. Because the one I've got is way better.
Yeah.
Well, and it's, you know, I think we touched on it a little bit earlier. Part of the perks of what we get to do is traveling. It's the freedom.
Yeah.
It's
that I can come down here on a Tuesday at 2:00. Yeah. And I don't need anyone's permission.
Podcast. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You know?
Yeah. It's the experiences more than just the money. I mean, I think I haven't been doing this full time. It'll be 2 years by the time this comes out, but I've done it long enough to know that I love doing this because I just love to do it. Yeah. And like if you do it because you want to get rich, you're going to be miserable because it's probably not going to happen.
Yep. And I learned an important lesson early on, which was, you know, people always ask me, how do you price things? We were talking about that earlier. And I started saying, you price it whatever you have to price it to get excited about it. And because of that, every job I do, I'm psyched to do it.
Yeah.
Because,
that's really good.
You know what I mean? The money is, so if it's a boring job, but the money's good, I'm excited to do it. And I'll do whatever you want. If it's a really cool job with no money, I'm still excited to do it because it's cool. So in that sense, everything I do is exciting to me. Yeah. Now I have the luxury of being able to bid things at a certain level and live with it if they don't hire me. Yeah. Not that I don't want to give the impression that I'm got it made. But,
but now, I mean, how many kids do you have now?
I have 3.
You have 3. I mean, so that's a pressure.
Oh, it's a huge pressure.
I mean, that's
that is why I've got to this point of saying like I'll do whatever needs to be done. Yeah, you know what I mean. Like I'll take any job because I want to make sure that I can continue to do this my way, and have the freedom to take my kids to the pool on a Tuesday or whatever.
Is most of your work still in Arkansas? Do you get to travel a lot?
I travel a lot. You know, I haven't thought about what percentage of it comes from out of state jobs, but it's a good bit. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I this year I've traveled an insane amount.
Favorite place you've been to?
Well, I got to shoot a wedding in Italy.
Oh my
So,
God. That's not bad.
Yeah. Maddie and Alex Barker, happy anniversary.
Shout out Maddie and Alex.
Yeah. So that was, you can't beat that. And I got to shoot an event in Hawaii last year.
I mean, how does stuff like that happen? How in the world do people in Italy or do people in Hawaii get connected with?
Well, the couple that got married in Italy is from North Little Rock.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And they hired me to. Originally their wedding was going to be here, and they hired me to shoot it here and everything. And we had a contract and all this stuff. And one day she said, "Hey, I hate to do this, but we're pulling the plug and we're going to go to Italy, and we're going to cancel this whole thing here," because she was like, "It's just a mess. Wedding planning is a mess." And so she said, "We're taking a very small group of people to Italy, and I'm really sorry, but that's that." And I said, "Well, you probably need good pictures in Italy, right?" And she was like, "Yeah, we do." And so, long story short, my wife and I went together, and there was like 13 people at the wedding, including me and my wife and the pastor. It was just the families, and so we got to have several days with them, and then we did our own thing for a few days too. I may never get another gig like that in my life.
Yeah. Is a lot of your out of state work, I guess, commercial?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of it.
How do you go about breaking into a market that's not one that's local?
So most of my travel work is shooting conferences.
Okay.
Which is a weird niche industry. It's very much like the wedding industry in that it is well funded. Mm. You know what I mean? There's a lot of vendors that live on that industry. And most of them are charging way more than I am. You know what I mean? Like, so if you have an event with 5,000 people, imagine the amount of cameras, microphones, lights, setup, speakers, food, drinks. So my little invoice is pennies compared to, what they have to pay for other stuff.
Yeah.
So I got shooting a conference for this group that plans conferences. Mm-hmm. And so all of their guests are also planning conferences.
Yeah.
And so they all kind of started to hire me. And so I shoot about 5 or 6 or 7 big conferences every year. And that's a lot of the travel work that I do. Mm-hmm. And then I've also been doing, like I shot in Illinois for Tyson last month. So sometimes it's local people that are sending me to do something. But it's all kind of disconnected.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's no clear thing.
Does a lot of your work come from word of mouth? Is that most of your marketing?
Oh, yeah. I don't do any advertising at all.
Okay.
Yeah. The only thing you'll find me on the internet is on my website or on Instagram. And really, if you look at my Instagram, there's not any professional pictures on it.
Yeah.
It's just family. It's just my life or whatever. Which I've found, interestingly enough, I think serves as a better advertising tool than actually showing your pro photos. Because now I can't say that from experience because I did have a pro Instagram account, for my photo business for a while.
Yeah.
And I probably didn't update it as much as I should have, but people didn't care about that nearly as much as they wanted to. I think people want to connect with you as a person and see what you're really like and see who you're hanging out with and what you're doing in your real life. And because of that, people see me and they, if they follow me or whatever and they see me out, they do feel like they know me to some degree. And that's great.
You also have a very distinguishable look. Shaved head, big beard, little white patch
the
on
white
mustache.
streak. Yeah. That's God's gift to me right there.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Has that always been there?
No, it turned white over a weekend, actually.
Really?
Yeah. I went skiing in Lake Tahoe. I sound like such a diva. We were wintering in Tahoe. We were snowboarding, and I have pictures of the beginning of the trip, and my mustache is brown. And at the end of the trip, it looks just like this, and it hasn't changed at all since then.
Was it a stressful weekend?
No, it was great. It was great.
Man.
I think Moses was like skiing with me at one point and just kind of touched my mustache.
Just that one spot.
Yeah.
I love that we're talking about like
great.
not being sorry, like not getting rich doing this. You just do it because you love it.
Yeah.
And in Lake Tahoe, I was
that was before I was a photographer, actually. So it had nothing to do with photography.
Right.
Well, one of the things on your website are actually these awesome hats.
Screw misery.
Yeah. Tell us the story behind this.
So it's gonna have to get real here, guys.
All right.
All right.
Deep dive.
Yeah. Well, so the big story behind that is I had a period of my life where I was miserable. In college, there was a time when I felt I was lonely. I didn't have any friends. I didn't, it was kind of like I was already in that space, and then I just like dove into it completely. Like, okay, fine, I'm going to be the most miserable bastard you've ever seen in your life. And I almost accepted that as this is where I'm going to be for now. And that's kind of my personality, is whatever lot gets handed to me, I'll pretend like I wanted it to be that way. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I wanted anyway.
Yeah.
And so I had a long period of just being bummed out all the time. And so now then flash forward to, obviously we all get in situations in our lives that are depressing, hard, difficult, whatever. And it is, I found out that it was really tempting to slip back into that misery feeling where you just wallow, and you can do that while also walking around and looking like you're happy in the world, And a buddy of mine were texting one day, and we were both just bummed out and just kind of down about different things. I forget which one of us said it, but somebody said, "Man, screw misery, dude. Let's get happy again, and do whatever it takes to get happy again." And I think we went and like hit rocks with a baseball bat into the water, and drank a beer, and just like, why do we focus on our problems so much? And so that's kind of the point of that. And it became a nice sort of slogan. But that really, I think, would sum up my life, or at least the way that I want to live my life. And it's not just, it's not ignore your problems. It's don't let them ruin you. Yeah. Like stay happy, stay confident, stay focused, push through, and don't let them ruin everything. Be happy with what you have. It's kind of the main purpose behind that whole statement.
That's a good segue to this next question of, I've talked a little bit about just being an entrepreneur or freelancing when you're in business. And that has its great seasons where it seems like everybody is calling you, and the money's coming in and you're having fun. And then there are seasons where it just seems like, did people just drop off the face of the earth? Why am I not being used? So what keeps you going in those low times? Yeah.
Thankfully, I don't have as many of those anymore as I used to. I still have them, but they're not as long and painful as they used to be. Knock on wood. I don't know, man. That's a hard question, because you start to go, well, maybe I'm not supposed to do this at all. Maybe I'm in the wrong line of work. Maybe there's another thing for me. Maybe I missed an opportunity. Maybe I need to open my eyes to something new that, that's outside of the realm that I thought I was going to be in. And I don't know. I guess I don't really have any good way to say. I mean, you know what? Some businesses are going to fail. Mm-hmm. You're just not. Some people are just not going to make it. And I don't necessarily like this attitude of like, well, just keep trying, man. You'll make it. Because sometimes that's not true. Sometimes you're just not going to make it. So, I guess it's kind of like certainly find other things that make you happy outside of financial success, because that is not going to happen for most people.
Right.
And I'm totally fine with that. I mean, I don't necessarily, I'm stable enough, but like I keep saying, like we're not out of the woods either. You know what I mean? Yeah. But it's working. But those slow times are rough, and I think it is good to have some kind of a personal project that you're working on, whether it's in photography or, starting a podcast, whatever gets your creative juices flowing and you get thinking about something. That's why I was shooting the iPhone portraits, with that light, and that turned into work for me. And it's because I was having fun with it. And I learned that, through that as a professional photographer that's actually working, I don't have a lot of situations where I am in control of the shoot. You know what I mean? Most of the time, my client's telling me what to do, and that's great, and I enjoy that. But my creativity comes in small pieces, but it doesn't drive the whole thing. Whereas when you do a personal project, you get to experiment and get weird and whatever. Mm-hmm. And another example of that is I bought this old Hasselblad film camera, and I just wanted to see if I could make it work with studio lights. And it did. And I shot some family photos with it and stuff. I mean, just of my family. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, well, let me see if I can turn this into money. And so I started doing these, Hasselblad family portrait shoots where it was my style. And it was the first time where I was ever like, here's what I'm offering you. Do you want it or not?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It wasn't, I'll do whatever you want. It was, this is what I'm giving you. And people loved it. And they came in and I shot, 3 or 4 rolls of film and, just pray that they turn out good.
Yeah.
And I was also shooting some digital just to make sure that I had something to work with.
Yeah.
But that turned into a good bit of work there. And then that turned into doing some commercial stuff with the Hasselblad. Now it's hard to fund a project like that when you're in one of those tough times when nobody's hiring you. I think sometimes you just have to sort of put on a front of success, which is, it may not, just like I was saying, standing on the ladder when the bride called, like you have to act like you're successful to get successful. Nobody's going to hire some sad sack.
Yeah.
That's like, I don't know if I can do it. You need to be, cocky sometimes, confident. There's a fine line between cocky and confident. I remember the movie Cinderella Man. You remember that?
Great film.
And Paul Giamatti plays his manager. And there's a part where somebody knocks on his door. It's the Great Depression. Somebody knocks on his door, and he opens his door just a little crack and pokes his head out. And he's always dressed up and looks nice and everything. And the guy let him in, and the apartment was empty. They had sold everything, and the guy looked around, and he's like, "What happened to all the, like, I thought you were successful." And Giamatti goes, "You always got to keep your fists up." And I was like, that's a really good point. Like, and it's not being fake, but you do, for the sake of your business, you have to put on an air of success.
If you could choose everything about the shoot on those personal projects where you're running the game, what is your favorite thing to shoot? And also in client side, what's your favorite thing?
Yeah. If I was completely in charge, I really like to do, environmental portraiture type stuff where it's a person in their environment. And I've been lucky to get to do a lot of that. But I think that's really fun. Portraits are cool and environments are cool, but combining those things and kind of giving the flavor or the smell of that situation and trying to put that in front of you where you know what it was like to be there. I think that's a lot of fun, whether it's a CEO or a plumber, you know what I mean? Or a kid, a school teacher, whatever. I think it's really cool to show people in their little world, and then light it in a really cool way. I'm more excited about shoots where I'm doing studio lighting than where I'm not.
I was good, yeah. Because there's a lot of people that love natural light. But you prefer being able to completely control the situation?
Yeah, mainly because there are so many people that shoot with natural light that I feel the need to step up my game a little bit. Some people say keep it simple, stupid, but I say make it as complicated as possible. Because it's gonna, if you pull it off, it's gonna work.
Yeah.
And you will pull it off because you kind of have to.
You have to. Yeah.
And so now most of the stuff you're going to see on my website is not that complicated, but I do like to put in a little bit of extra time, and part of that is using studio lights. That's going to take you to one level. Now that's not to say natural light people aren't any good. They're amazing, but it's 2 different flavors.
Right. Right. So I should have asked this before, but I'm just curious. If you could go back 15 years ago and like see yourself now, not on this podcast necessarily, but just being in this moment of like, you've been a professional freelance photographer for 10 years running your own company. Would 15 years ago you be going, there's no way that's possible?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, were you ever like an entrepreneurial spirit at all in high school or college?
No. I did the least amount of work to get by. And I barely got by at all. The only thing I've ever been like dedicated about is having the freedom to do what I want to do on a regular basis. But no, I would have never thought that this would have worked in any real sense. I would have been fine just shooting weddings and families like for the rest of my life. And I have no problem going back to that too. It's a fun thing to do. But honestly, every single day, I say to myself, I cannot believe I get to do this. I'm unbelievably blown away by just the fact that I can I mean, I slept until 9:30 today. Most people don't get to do that.
Yeah. And your kids are having to get up early to go to school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I did not sleep through. I don't sleep in at school days.
Okay.
I get up and help. I've got a lot of friends that have, 9 to 5, 8 to 5 jobs. It really turns out to be more like 8 to 6, 8 to 7 kind of jobs. And now they're on the clock all the time, because you got to have your phone and stuff.
Yeah.
And the fear of that is enough to make me keep on going with this as long as possible. And if this all, goes to crap tomorrow, I will be happy that I got to do it for 10 years. But I don't think I could do the bank job.
Yeah.
Pass on the bank job.
I don't think I could do that.
So you have quite a bit. I just want to jump in this because you've got some celebrity faces too on your on your page. How did can you tell us a little bit about some of those stories, just how some of that stuff happened?
Yeah. So so one that people would notice pretty quickly is Peyton Manning is on there.
No big deal.
No big deal.
Yeah.
So again, there's always a lame story behind every cool story. And whatever, this isn't it. They're all interesting, right?
Yeah.
So Peyton Manning was speaking at a conference that I was shooting. And that's honestly one of the ways that I've gotten to photograph a lot of people. But most of the time I don't get to shoot a portrait of them, which is really all I care about. I don't care about somebody speaking behind a podium. It is what it is. Everybody's seen that shot.
Yeah.
So I asked anytime there's a celebrity or someone that's known at an event, I always ask my client, can I have 5 minutes with them for a portrait? Because they're paying them to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And so if they just tell them like that's part of the deal, then maybe they'll say yes, right? So so I asked about Peyton Manning, and it took a while, but it got approved, right? And so it's like, all right, yeah, we'll do that because he was going to speak, and then he was going to do a meet and greet, and they said you can do it right before the meet and greet in the same room as the meet and greet, and you can't go anywhere else. And I said, okay, I'm going to set up a light on one wall, and I'll have the meet and greet stuff ready the other way. Like, okay, great. And so we're all set up. We've done some test shots. And when Peyton came in the room, it was clear to me that he did not know about the portrait.
Yeah.
It was very obvious. And it was real weird. And, you've seen him on Saturday Night Live. And I mean, he's a fantastic actor and, comedy guy.
Mm-hmm.
So I was expecting him to be, gregarious and full of energy and stuff. And he was pretty subdued and not real excited about. Now, who would be excited about a meet and greet, honestly? If you're Peyton Manning, you're just sick of doing those things. So he came in, I said, hey, we're going to do the portrait over here. And he's like, what? And I salvaged it to the point that I did get to shoot photos of him, but I shot 4 frames in 23 seconds. And on one of them, the light didn't fire. So I only got 3 shots of him. And my second shooter for these events, his name's Andy, was like holding a speed light like this with a little softbox on it.
Yeah.
18 inches from Peyton's face. And I'm standing this close to him, and he was just stone cold. He gave me nothing.
Oh, God.
He was just standing there, and I was like, hey, can you give me like I forget what I asked him to do something different.
Yeah.
And it was like I didn't even say it. He just stared at me. And I was like, snap, okay, I think we're good, man.
Oh, gosh.
It was the most awkward 30 seconds of my life. But then I did the meet and greet, and afterwards he was like, hey, good job, man. Thanks for doing that.
Oh, well,
So,
yep.
like,
Oh, we got that.
yeah.
Got that? Yeah.
So he was cool. He was totally cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know who else is on my website. Well, like a lot of you'll see Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton and Donald Trump on there, and those were all news related.
Usually.
You had what's the climbing guys?
Alex Honnold.
Yeah.
Yeah, I shot him. So my buddy Andy that shoots with me also started a climbing competition in Newton County. It's called 24 Hours of Horseshoe Hell, and it's the biggest climbing competition in the country.
This is in Arkansas?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's just near Jasper, Arkansas. It's amazing. It's huge. I think they're on like year 13.
Once again, I'm a terrible Arkansan. Had no idea about that.
Yeah, man, you got to get watermelons and rock climbing. So he has, they have the biggest pros in the world come and compete at Horseshoe Canyon alongside total amateurs. So it's kind of fun because you get to meet, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I knew Honnold was going, and I'm a big fan of his, and I just told Andy that I was going to come up and shoot some photos of Honnold, and he was like, yeah, great, I don't care. So I spent about an hour with him, and he was really cool. And Andy just told him, like, we're going to do some portraits of you. And he's like, whatever, great. I don't care. So I got some cool shots of him.
Yeah.
And the only thing I don't like about it is that he's wearing a harness in the photo. And he's known for being a free solo climber. So you don't see him in a harness very much.
Yeah.
But he had to be roped up at this competition. That was like part of the rules. But he was cool. It was great.
That's awesome.
He's an animal. I mean, if you see this guy climb, it doesn't even look that impressive because it looks so easy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You kind of watch him and you go, okay.
Yeah.
But then you find out that he's doing something that like only 3 other people can do. And he's doing it like without breaking a sweat.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's really cool.
I mean, that's like, I can't imagine as a filmmaker, like having to film like free solo, knowing that at any moment, he could potentially fall. Like that's, I mean, this from that side of the camera, it's like, that is just crazy.
That'd be an insane
let alone
job.
being him.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
I remember hearing something that he said though that was so cool because somebody asked him like, "Man, do you get nervous? Like, is your like heart racing and stuff?" He's like, "No." He said, "If that happens, it's real bad."
Yeah, something's gone wrong.
He said, I go up. He says, I do every summit harnessed in first, like the day before and stuff, and I map my entire route out. So it's just mimicking exactly what I've done the day before.
Yeah.
Which is just it's so cool. It's
I haven't seen free solo.
Like,
oh, you got to see it.
Oh, yeah.
But I've seen Dawn Wall. My wife and I watched Dawn Wall recently, and that was
I got to
equally
meet
as crazy.
Tommy Caldwell at Horseshoe Canyon too. I didn't.
Oh,
get to
did you?
shoot him. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that a pretty tight knit? Like, are all those guys friends?
Yeah, they all know each other. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about, you could name a whole lot of pro football players that are amazing. You can't name a whole lot of rock climbers.
Yeah,
Right.
that's true.
You know what I mean? It's just a
Pretty niche
smaller
group.
world. You can name musicians, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a lot of good rock climbers, but
Very few great ones.
very few great ones. Yeah, for sure.
So as a creative, we all kind of have these stories, and you've told us multiple of these stories. But what is one of the worst experiences you've had on a shoot?
Yeah.
Or best experience? We've heard one of like this wedding videographer set up, went home, took a nap, woke up during the ceremony.
You're kidding.
Like real bad.
And just overslept?
Not local, but overslept.
He's a huge YouTuber
Yeah.
now. Yeah, he's doing well, but he's
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, like it was one of his first ones,
I've never done that.
So, any horror stories?
Yeah, for sure. Only one time ever have I completely stood up a client and didn't show up. It was an engagement shoot, and I just get a call. I was at a birthday party for one of my kids' friends, and these people call me out of the blue, and they go, "Hey, where are you?" And I was like, "Oh my God, I totally forgot." And I was like, "I can't get out of this. Can we just reschedule?" So they were totally cool with it.
Yeah.
They acted cool with it.
Yeah.
But that's the only time that's happened. The biggest horror story for me would be I shot these photos for the New York Times, and gosh, I can't remember what was the story. It may have been I shot a tornado damage. It was like the day after this tornado that hit Valonia.
Yeah.
And I came in pretty early the next morning after, anyway, I shot a whole bunch of photos of tornado stuff. I'm pretty sure that was it. Anyway, I called the photo editor at the time, or I submitted the photos just like normal.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as I submitted them, I email them and say, I just submitted. Let me know what you think. And he calls me like 30 seconds later, and he was like, what is this garbage that you've sent me? And he was not joking. And I like laughed, I was like, oh, like, what are you talking about? And he was like, he just ripped me to shreds on the phone.
Was this early on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It was pretty early on. He just tore me up and said, he was going through them individually and saying why they sucked.
Oh.
It was hard.
Ooh.
It was the worst, I think it was the worst call I've ever gotten.
Yeah.
And I was like, I wanted to say, screw you, man, and hang up on him, but and it was early on enough where I really needed to keep that job,
Yeah.
And I said, man, his name was Jose. And I said, Jose, you're absolutely right. And tell me what I can do to fix these things. And I said, if you'll just take some time and edit one of these for me. Actually, what he said was, the photos are crap and the editing is worse. but maybe with some editing, we can pull these out of the garbage can.
Yeah.
And I said, if you'll edit one of them for me, I will take your style and redo all of these like that. And he's like, fine. So he sends me one photo that he had edited differently. And it was just like, it was just minor. I mean, it wasn't minor things. There were some major differences, but I needed to learn what they wanted.
Yeah.
And actually, it turned into a little bit of a mentoring relationship because I would email him and say like, hey, I'm just shooting these things. What do you think? And he'd say like, too dark, too much contrast. Why is this thing in the shot? And it was all like great advice. I mean, there's a reason the Times hired this guy to be their photo editor. But that was the worst. Like, you know how it feels when your head just fills up with blood?
Yeah.
Just like, oh my gosh.
Oh man.
I'm a total failure. This will never work.
I mean, I was like about to cry.
Yeah.
That was really, really bad.
Well, that's another great segue into what advice would you have for up and coming photographers, specifically maybe in the Central Arkansas market, but just anywhere this is being listened to. I mean, we've talked about, just instead of saying screw you, maybe just saying, okay, how can I get better? We talked about at times you just need to be a yes man. What else would you tell people that are like, they want to get into this business?
Just drop your ego. Nobody cares what you think. Nobody cares about your feelings.
Yeah.
And if you're not very good, just get better. And quit this diva thing. Cause I think a lot of photographers have this kind of diva, like sort of mindset of like, I'm really great. I'm one of the best. And you kind of have to be that way as a creative. I talk about confidence, but it's more confidence in yourself than in your work, or maybe it's a combo of the two. But if you want to make money and actually be a working photographer, I think you have to, like I said earlier, give up on your dream a little bit to be the Rolling Stone guy, and be the local guy that shoots politicians, and do that really, really well, and be excited about it, and be excellent at it, and more than that, just be happy and nice to people, and it'll come back to you. Because I think a lot of times, the best photographer, and this probably goes for any business, the best person doesn't always get the job. It's the best, nicest person.
Yeah.
The person that you want to work with.
Yeah.
If people don't want to work with you, it's your fault and you're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's this perception. We see this in films all the time. These people being portrayed, these super successful people, but they're so full of themselves and they're jerks to everybody. And we get this notion like, well, I have to be that.
Yeah.
And the real world is, if you're a great photographer or a great whatever, but you're a jerk, nobody wants to work with you.
Nobody wants to work with you.
Yeah.
Not when there's other people to choose from.
Yeah, especially.
Unless you're doing something that is so unique that no one can even copy it. You have no space to be a jerk to people.
Yeah. And even then, it's like, it's really difficult. I've been listening to some Gary Vee podcasts, and he was addressing that. He said that was like an old business model, businessmen who would have this person on their team that was great at what they did, but they were horrible to be around or to work with. And he said, you got to fire that person immediately.
Yeah.
He said, I don't care how good they are. Yeah. They're destroying your culture, and eventually your company will be better for it. Just get rid of that person, even if they're the best one on your team, and go for somebody else.
And for the most part, unless you're John Lennon, your product is not that much more better than anyone else.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not that much better.
Yeah.
Unless you're just an absolute genius. There's probably somebody else that can do basically what you do. And there's plenty of people that can do exactly the same thing I do.
But it's all about who you know. It's those connections you make.
Yeah.
And the great thing is, like, there's plenty of work for people. Like, I think we all think, or at least my experience has been, I think we all just think that, well, there's only room for this many people in this field and everyone else is screwed. No, there's like, I going back to like, would we ever think we would be running our own businesses or freelancing? I never thought, like, I'm not wired that way at all.
Yeah.
But it just takes meeting one person who leads you to another person, and there's plenty of work to go around.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. And like I said, get excited about the lame jobs.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people would find themselves standing in front of a library, like I've done so many times, that, I'm shooting for the architect and think, I'm a total failure. I'm shooting this library in Conway.
Yeah.
what have I done? You know, like, why am I not known as a photographer? And I'm thinking, this is amazing. I get to shoot this freaking library. Like, it's so easy.
Yeah.
You know? So yeah,
that's awesome.
You got to stay
That's
excited
cool.
about the work that you're getting.
That's all. And that's a good note to end on. Jacob,
Cool.
thanks for being on, man. This is cool. Lucas, you have anything else?
No, that was it. It's been great to get to know you and introduce you to the world.
Yeah.
Our small little portion of it.
Our
Our families.
Yeah, sure.
It's great to introduce you to
Our
our
parents
families.
really
Yeah.
want to meet
Hi,
you.
Mom.
Yeah.
Hey, real quick, where can people find you online?
JacobSlaton.com.
JacobSlaton.com and Instagram.
Jacob Slaton.
Nice and simple.
One-stop shop.
One
Man,
like
there it is.
Yeah, that's it.
There it is.
If there's anything else online, it's not
it's
really
not
me.
you.
It's not. Hey, that happens though. People
Yeah.
still like those pictures all the time.
People
Weird
tell me
thing.
they find me on Facebook all the time, and I haven't been on Facebook in 8 years probably.
Really?
Wow.
And I just go, great. Glad you found me.
Yeah. That's great. That's so
You're getting
good.
so many messages from your aunts or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Jacob, hope you're
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, exactly.
And Screw Misery. Keep that. Do you have these? Are these
They are no
available?
longer available.
No longer available.
But
Yeah,
if you
the last
bump into
ones.
me, I
You
have
missed
a
out.
bunch of stickers in my glove box.
Oh, yeah.
There we go. So just walk around looking for Jacob and
Yeah.
maybe
Ask
you
for
can get a sticker.
Yeah,
Awesome.
that's right.
Sweet. Thanks for being on, man.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right. Bye.
See ya.